Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome back to Houselights, our director discussion show here on the Nerd Party Network. Today, we're completing The Birdhouse, covering Brad Bird's final directed work as of this date, Incredibles 2. It's also Brad's first sequel. I'm Darren Moser, and I'm joined again by my friends, screenslaver, goggle repairman, Tristan Riddell, and ambassador to the supers, John Mills. Gentlemen, no capes allowed as we discuss just how much money this film made. Wow, Incredibles 2. Not The Incredibles 2. Only two words. It's not often that we get to sequels. I mean, granted, we had Godfather, and that's kind of its own thing. But yeah, now we get to see, after 14 years, Brad Bird come back to the well of this story. And I think that's going to be really interesting to compare and contrast, because, does the second story hold up to the first? Is it, technology has advanced. It's not like, can we do humans and hair? Pixar has advanced so much between those two years. But let's start with one of our favorite first questions. Again, this was only 5 years ago, 2018. Tristan, when did you see this? Was it, of course, Pixar, time to see it, or was The Incredible 2, maybe let it go to streaming?
This one was let it go to streaming. Like it was very much, I've waited 14 years.
I can wait a few months more.
I can wait
That's
6
not
months.
Too bad. Yeah.
Honestly, I think that was it. Like if it was 2 years after, I probably would have been like, "Oh, sweet, another Incredibles film." Yeah, I'll go see that right away. But because it was so long, it was monumental because it was so long, but at the same time detrimental because you could wait no problem. And so, yeah, I saw this when it was streaming, and that was the only time I watched it was in 2018 when it was released on streaming.
Wow. So I just looked it up. So this movie was 14 years after the first one, just beating out by 1 year longer than James Cameron's gap between Avatar and Avatar 2 of 13 years. Wow, Brad, you waited. I didn't think anyone would outdo Cameron on that stat, but you did.
When this movie was coming out, there were so many memes of Gary Oldman's character Sirius Black in the Harry Potter films when he's like, "I've done my waiting, 14 years of it."
Well, what about you, John? Was this taking the family to the Cineplex, or were you ready to wait an extra 6 months to just sit in your own home with your own food and just enjoy The Incredibles 2?
This was my first time watching it. I
you didn't even catch it.
Oh, okay.
Didn't even catch
Interesting.
it.
Cool.
It wasn't one of those things where it was like a conscious thing where it was like, screw that movie. It was more of a thing of, I will go ahead and speak to this. One, being skeptical about
you
waiting that long between sequels. I was that way with Avatar 2 as well, but I'm gonna go ahead and throw the first controversial comment out there that, number one, in May of 2018, I believe I was more excited at the end of that month to see Solo, A Star Wars Story. And I believe I used the weekend that Incredibles 2 came out to go see that again. And I think that additionally, the worm had sort of started to turn on the long-awaited sequel / reboot / whatever by this point. For me at least, where I started to question, I was like, well, do we really need to go back to these things? And so my decision wasn't like, oh, screw this movie. It was like, I'll get to it. And then it's just, nowadays in the streaming era, once it goes in the I'll get to it queue, stuff continually gets put in front of it. It's the reason that bookshelves never empty, is because you're always like, oh, well, I'll read this after this one. I'll read this after, and you just keep adding and adding and adding. Yeah. And then you lose track of who's next.
You're a man of
media.
And all that. So, and you have a podcast about movies. So we're all constantly putting things on your queue in front of other things.
That is true. Homework does get in the way a lot of times. That is a fact.
That's why longtime listeners will know that if I really want John to watch something, I send him a physical copy of the movie with a note that says, "Love you, watch this."
This is true. This is true. And it works every time. So if there's somebody out there that wants me to watch a movie, send a message to Tristan over at the Insane Robin and tell him to send me a physical copy. There you go.
I'll send it. I won't give out your address, but I will send it to him. You can send it to TNP headquarters.
There you go.
I think you need to start a P.O. box, John, and give that out, and then just people will send you random movies. You got to get the capitalize.
I love it. I love it.
So, yeah, I did see this in theaters. I also do have fairly young children who are still kind of in that Disney Pixar grasp. And though this was the year that Into the Spider-Verse came out and was kind of redefining what animation could be. And it was
beat
up again.
It in length.
Yeah.
Because this was the longest.
This was 118.
Not only was this the longest Pixar film in terms of minutes,
it feels like
it was the longest animated film, and then CG animated film, and then Across the Spider-Verse came out and it beat it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, So yeah, I saw it again probably just because it's Pixar. You know, you pretty much know what you're going to get with a Pixar movie, and you know we enjoyed it, but it's interesting. Not that I want to unpack into a bigger discussion, but it feels like Disney and Pixar, like 2 points. Disney and Pixar almost kind of look the same at this point. Like they're like the visual style is just a hair different between the two. And also you have the fact that it is a style, and I would rather Pixar be known for a certain, you know, cinematic storytelling quality, and that is the only constant, not, well, I know what a character is going to look like in a Pixar movie, versus, again, you know, we'll mention Spider-Verse a lot, but something that is leaning into being an animated film, playing with the color and the camera and the action and the comic bookness and all of that. And Pixar movies don't really risk that anymore. They are not always photoreal, but it's just hard when you're playing in this caricature world that these animated films fall in. And it's just like they're not taking risks. This doesn't feel like a risk. This feels like it made a lot of money on the first one, and so we're going to bring out a second one. And it worked. I mean, we talked about last week about Brad Bird's Tomorrowland needing to recoup some lot, although that was different production company. But this was budgeted for $200 million, just a little more than Tomorrowland was, and made worldwide $1.2 billion. It printed
Billion with a
so
B.
much money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my soapbox about Pixar. But what do you think of that, John?
No, I mean, I think that's a very fair point. The Disney effect is taking place by this point, and it's what I mean by that is Disney's corporate imprint has become overbearing, and there feels like there's a lot less room for innovation and ingenuity. And you know, that's just my opinion. And I think that is probably one of the things that didn't make me excited for Incredibles 2, is because even in the ads, I felt like I'd seen this before. And why would I, you know, I was like, why would there be any urgency, as opposed to, because it was mentioned earlier, Into the Spider-Verse, which, okay, Incredibles 2 made $1.2 billion, which was, you know, 0.1 billion less than The Last Jedi, which cost $100 million more to make and all of that stuff. But by this point, it's just Disney's in the money printing machine phase. And since we mentioned Into the Spider-Verse earlier, a highly original film, that made a fraction, made like less than a third of what this did. But in terms of cultural
made
impact,
almost 400. Yeah.
But in terms of cultural impact,
we're still talking about it.
We still talk about Into the Spider-Verse. Who is still talking about Incredibles 2? And I think that is reflected as well in the product, in that it does have that feel of here, we know the template. We're just going to color inside the lines, and we're going to give to you what you expect, and you're going to love it because we're going to market the hell out of it, and you're all going to feel like you got to go see this movie and, pack you into the theater.
So, Tristan, this movie, I think one of the big differences is this is post 2008. This is post a superhero world where you have Marvel and Iron Man and all of these superhero movies that you didn't have back when the Incredibles was kind of new and fresh and a different take on the superhero genre. How do you think that stack up in Incredibles 2? I've heard that Brad Bird was trying to focus more on the family aspect, and it's like the fact that the superheroes is kind of tacked on or in addition to, but he really wanted to focus on, and we'll get into it. I really want to get your dad views of the mother-father relationship in this movie. But on the superhero side, did it feel like this movie could almost be told without them being supers and they're just a 60s family?
Oh, I don't know if I would go that far,
Maybe
because
not that
I think
far.
there's
That's a little far.
yeah, that's a little far, because I think there's some really great superhero moments in this movie where I really like I really like the idea of Mr. Incredible taking a backseat to the superhero missions and being more of the stay-at-home dad, because I think his interactions with Jack Jack are really great. Specifically, I think when this came out in 2018, I had a kid who was around the age of Jack Jack at that time, and uh, there, like, when he was reading to Jack Jack and he fell asleep, and then Jack Jack just smacked him on the face a couple of times to wake him up to keep reading. I was like, oh man, I have absolutely 100% been there. So there's so many moments as a dad where I absolutely and 100% related to Mr. Incredible. But at the same time, the Elastigirl stuff, specifically the motorcycle chase on with the train, that is a phenomenal piece of action.
That's an amazing sequence.
And
that's a Brad Bird I've done Mission Impossible sequence.
Yes, very much. That is like, if you were to ask the question, where do you see Brad Bird? It is in that train motorcycle sequence. That if Ethan Hunt had superpowers, that's how it would have been shot. And that is I know I've said that word before, but it is a phenomenal sequence. It is great action, and that alone is enough to say, no, keep the superhero stuff. But to answer your question, yeah, the non-superhero stuff was really great, and I really liked the frustration that he had, Mr. Incredible had, with teaching Dash math. I think that's actually the moment that stays with me the most with this movie, is when he's like, how do they change math? Because this is supposed to be like pseudo 50s, pseudo 60s kind of mentality. And my mother graduated high school in the 60s and went to middle school in the 60s. And that's when they started doing the new math. And she has never recovered from it because it was a failed experiment.
Well,
I was thinking more about Common Core and like modern day.
Yeah, I've been through the modern day math stuff, and what I can tell you is that the bit of advice that my older kids have gotten from their father is do it this way and then reverse engineer how they want you to show it. Game the system. Right. Because the way I'm teaching you is faster than what they're teaching you, and you are learning an additional bit of how to sort of like use showmanship to make it through and have people look the other way that you made your own rules, sort of thing, which maybe is a bad lesson to teach your kids. But at the same time, I'm not, I draw 10 squares, divide them in threes, multiply it by 12, when I could just do 100 minus 98. Why the hell am I doing boxes for? It's just, you cross this off and move that around, sort of thing. So the math is math thing, that had me uproariously laughing.
I was cracking up
because I've been in that exact moment already a couple of times, and my kids would watch that scene and laugh because they've seen their dad. Math is math. You can't change. What are they talking about? Changing math? This is dumb. Why are you doing this? And then
I like that aspect of the 60s, though, Tristan. I didn't realize that had kind of happened before, and that so your mom had that kind of experience of here's a new way of teaching something that feels like it's old as time, but there's always something new.
Yeah, there's always some paradigm shift in education that totally doesn't work.
Well, yes.
It's I the thing is, I think this gets to one of my criticisms of the movie, though, is Tristan, you're absolutely right that action sequence is great. Like, I look at that action sequence on its own, and I'm like, holy crap, this is an absolute, master at work here, right? Somebody who has complete command of how to give direction, how to get what they're looking for and make it look fantastic and pace it just right.
Incredible. You have to use the word incredible as much as possible in this podcast. Sorry.
I apologize. I will try harder next time. But you can excise that specific sequence out, show it, and that is a brilliant section of film. But with the other parenting stuff that you're doing, I never get the feeling, maybe I'm alone of the three of us here. The problem I look at is it doesn't really seem to mesh. It seems like a director who's making things work scene by scene, sometimes really well. And then it's almost like two parallel movies running. And it's like, I don't know where Brad Bird's heart is in this movie. I feel like it's with the parenting stuff. I feel like all of the parenting stuff is a parent musing about what he's been through. And then he knows he has to do the incredible adventure stuff. So he does that too. But that's not really where his heart is this time.
Well, again, on that quote of him talking about, focusing on the parent aspect, but he also talked about the reason for not time jumping it, because it's been, 14 years. So you could have it take place 14 years later, but instead it picks up like months, right? It's like right after the first movie. And obviously you don't have to change the kids, they're not older or something like that. But I think he's quoted in saying he likes the fact that he didn't have to reinvent a whole bunch of new superheroes. Like, obviously you have the newer ones that we see in this movie, but you don't have to build the world as much because it hasn't been like a decade. So when your director of a superhero movie is saying, I didn't want to build the world more than I had to, I wanted to focus on the aspects of the family, I think that answers where his heart was in this story. Not for good or bad, just that's where his focus was. But yeah, and you have, like we were kind of mentioning earlier, one of the differences in this movie is, again, the technical aspect. When Brad was making the first one, it was like, how do we do humans? And can we do long hair and water like we want to? And in this one, I'm sure they always push the envelope in every single movie they make. They seem to, but it was a vastly different experience. I think we got the train sequence because the technology had progressed so much. Although I did hear that they had to rebuild all the characters in the new software. The software had completely changed, so they couldn't just go into the archive zip disk and pull the Mr. Incredible file in. It was a completely new rebuild. But
I think they even had to do that with, I think, between Toy Story 2 to 3,
right.
or it might even been 1 to 2. I'm not quite sure.
As you say.
Yeah, they had to completely recreate it because time had passed and technology has grown, where they're just like, yeah, they can't import this one. You gotta rebuild it with way more polygons.
Right. Yeah, polygons, and just how the software works, how you can command the character to emote or do what, all of these variables that you're adjusting. And it's, I'm sure, night and day. Also, yeah, it'd be kind of an interesting just thought of Brad coming back to animation, because his last two movies were live action. So he'd done Mission Impossible and Tomorrowland. And so now this movie was announced in 2014 that he was coming back to do The Incredibles 2. Incredibles 2. I don't know why they took that out, but that's at least a 4-year time span of producing. Obviously, we all know it's longer than that because these movies take forever to produce, but he's kind of starting while he's doing Tomorrowland, getting that script started, kind of getting that ball rolling, deciding those big brush strokes. But we'd kind of talked about, him taking over Tomorrowland. This is obviously his baby. This was his idea that he originated in The Incredibles. Where, Tristan, in this movie, do you feel it's still his baby? Maybe it's the baby, literally the baby. But do you feel like there's a specific aspect of this film that has that Brad Birdiness besides the train scene?
Well, I think in terms of action, the train scene is very much there, but in terms of story content, and you can tell that this is his baby, as in he loves The Incredibles. The Incredibles is him, and there's a reason why he waited 14 years, because he went on record saying, he's like, if I'm gonna do an Incredible sequel, I'm gonna wait until I have a really great idea that either matches or exceeds the original. And so I truly think it's the whole stay at home dad aspect. I
Yeah.
think in terms of action, it's Elastigirl going like crazy, and for his filmmaking technique, but for his baby, I think it's Mr. Incredible interacting with Jack Jack. I really do. I think those are some really key heartfelt moments that Brad Bird threw himself into.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree about
agree
that.
too.
I think, and it is one of those things where I think that, yes, this is announced before Tomorrowland comes out, but there's almost a sense for me watching this that this is the unfortunate thing. I think is that it's too comfortable for Bird to be back in here. I feel like you know what? I think that who cares how I feel? I think that what I'm seeing reflected here is somebody coming back to something that is safe, and he knows he has complete control here.
Yeah.
And given that Mission Impossible 4 is Brad Bird coming in and making Tom Cruise's dreams come true, and then Tomorrowland doesn't go quite the way we think he wants it to, this very much feels like a director who isn't pushing himself at this point, but rather purposefully taking a step back into a safer space where he knows he can exert more influence, and he knows he can. It's almost like somebody who is like a boxer goes up and loses the prize fight, so they go back down, but then they take on an opponent that's more matched to their level as they climb back up the rankings, sort of thing. And this feels like something that Bird is just more comfortable with. And that is not an insult. I think that if anything, this should teach a lesson to some, people in creative spaces out there, that it's okay to have a strong suit. This is obviously where Brad Bird excels.
Yeah.
Don't feel obliged to go into live action. Do what comes naturally to you. Do what you're excellent at and excel at it. And that's great. That's what we want you to do. We want you to succeed because you gave us Iron Giant. You gave us Incredibles. You gave us Ratatouille. Awesome. If this is where it works, by all means, stick with it. You tried the live action stuff. Maybe we didn't love it as much as your animated stuff. Cool. So do animated stuff, and we will love you for it, and we will love what you do, and just stay there. Like, obviously I'm not saying there's like, Mr. Bird, stay in your lane. I'm not saying something like that. I'm saying like,
Right.
It's okay to embrace what you're best at. It's, Captain Kirk was never meant to be an admiral. It's okay to stay in the chair that you're best at.
Don't let them promote you to live action director.
Yeah.
Don't let them transfer you.
It's his first best destiny. Embrace it.
Yeah. No, and we've seen other directors who kind of doubled down. Like they didn't have a really good release, or it didn't quite gel, and then they made another one, and it just kept getting worse. And not to say that Brad Bird couldn't come back to live action with the right story. I think it always comes down to story, really, of his, if it's got action in it, it's probably going to do rather well. But yeah, and I don't know anything about it except the name. I know his TBA, next picture is called Ray Gunn, Gunn. I don't know if it's animated. I don't know if it's live action. It sounds sci-fi. Sounds exactly like the kind of movie title I would expect from a Brad Bird, director. So I'm excited for that. I will see what that is around the corner. But yeah, with Tomorrowland, with Incredibles 2, yeah, I think, not that we're dancing around it, we're obviously showing we have some criticisms of this movie. It's not a perfect movie. It's not I think honestly part of it is just the fact that it's a sequel, and sequels on their own, you have this pressure to bigger and better everything, and add more characters and add more, and the story gets less tight. I mean, the first movie is like so sharp and so clear on that world it's building. It builds just enough world to give you what you need. It's got a really, there's no protagonist confusion. It is Mr. Incredible. It is his midlife crisis movie. Exactly. And not that I'm saying there's protagonist confusion in this one, but as the world grows, you start to sacrifice minutes of screen time, like with Helen, or are we showing more of Bob, or are we showing the other supers and what's going on in the world? Like every choice you're making is minutes you're spending with not your main character or not your main family. And that's something you have to stay on top of. So I guess what I'm saying is I feel like a lot of times sequels will, it's very easy for them to run away with themselves and be like, oh, we're going to see the entire world. Look at all the characters we can put in this shot with this new technology. But story wise, do you guys kind of wish that this was a tighter, smaller story? Obviously still focused on Elastigirl. I would even take a flashback of her glory days. Like that could be incredible. See what I did? But what do you think just on the scope, how this kind of came together? What do you think, Tristan?
I don't know if I would say that it needs to be smaller, because I don't think this was something that, failed due to bloat from a story perspective, or, like, you mentioned how this is in a post Iron Man, post Dark Knight world. And I feel like around the time that this came out, we were really suffering from the blue screen. The blue beam in the sky
Yeah. Yeah.
at the end of the movie, and a huge CGI fight, and the world is going to end. That doesn't happen here. Like the world's not going to end here. The bomb's not going to go off. The beam's not in the sky. Aliens aren't going to invade. Nothing like that. And so I applaud it for not going that route. So I don't think it needs to be smaller.
That's true.
I think
Incredible
this is
Save the World would be a bit too much.
a bit too much. And so I really do think this stayed within its wheelhouse, stayed where its talents were. And I think, to me, mainly, if I can go on a tangent a little bit after I answer your question.
Just tangent it up. You are right angle man. Only moving in tangents.
Since we're at the 28-minute mark, I have been heaping praise on this movie. This movie is good. It's not great.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it made a lot of money and a lot of people loved it, it got a lot of praise. I started reading reviews for it in preparation to this podcast, and there was a lot of critics who were saying this was heaped with praise. But to me, I think this was a situation of, this is a good movie with great visuals, fantastic score, great voice acting, good story, okay script.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. I mean, there's some really great moments. There's some, like we talked about the moments, like the stuff between Mr. Incredible and Jack, like everything like that. Those are some really great moments. So the stuff with Frozone and his wife as a callback to the original, showing Elastigirl being raised from just female protagonist to protagonist in this film is some really great stuff. But the script itself just doesn't have the charm of the original. And I think that's what really suffers for me watching this film. John, do you disagree with that? Do you agree with that? What's your take on that?
I agree. I think that I likewise sort of struggle with what is it that doesn't quite gel here. And it's always one of those things where as you're thinking through it, you're afraid of like overstating this or overstating that. But I think that one of the things that makes it feel longer than it actually is, this feels longer than 118 minutes. And I think the reason it feels longer than that is because, Darren, I think you're right. There isn't protagonist confusion here per se, but there is not as much of a controlled sense of perspective or focus here. It's the first one, it's like, oh, well, this is, Mr. Incredible's midlife crisis movie. And it's two different stories running parallel to each other.
Exactly.
And so it almost feels like, and I think, tell me if I'm right here. I think when you're saying like, a smaller film, I almost wonder, as much as I enjoy the Elastigirl stuff on its own merits, I almost wonder if the film benefits if we get a little bit less time, quote unquote, with her, so that we see it more from the perspective of Mr. Incredible being so incredibly frustrated and not knowing what's going on.
He's not
when you
there.
And when you let the audience in fully, you can't understand or respect the idea of that character being completely out of it, because you know what's going on.
Right.
And so I think if more effort had been made to obscure what she was going through whatever way you want to do it, we wind up understanding more what was being attempted with Mr. Incredible here. And we feel his frustration more. And so the point sort of hammers home more about that. But then at the same time, what are you sacrificing when you choose to do that? And it's all of these little choices through there. If anything, if I were to go ahead and nitpick something, I think in a sense almost that having Frozone feels like its own little tiny distraction to it. Frozone feels like he's there because he's got to be there because everybody loved Frozone. So that feels like a sequelitis thing where it's like, how am I going to work Frozone into the story? It's okay to just bring him in at the end. But because it was Sam Jackson, everybody loved Frozone, and he was a scene stealer last time. Oh, well, we got to have Frozone in this as much as we can. And it's like, to your point, Tristan, that's valuable slices of time you're sacrificing here with all of this stuff. So it feels like just sort of like a death by 1,000 cuts sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I really like that aspect you said about more time with Bob, just his point of view. Like, again, with the whole train sequence in the beginning, I mean, obviously he trusts Helen. He trusts that she's like super capable, but this is still where superheroes are kind of illegal and not quite shouldn't be like out and about. And so he's at home with the kids and he hears about this explosion and this train. Like, he doesn't know what, like, show, like, literally, like you're saying, just his point of view. He has no idea if she's okay, what's going on. And it's kind of like that firefighter mentality of like, the family's at home and, mom or dad is out doing their job, but it's really dangerous. And there's actually that risk. And, there's they already kind of dabbled into it in the first movie of him thinking he had lost them. We've already experienced that particular emotion. But yeah, the death by 1,000 cuts, I think that's what I was really trying to say with the sequelness is, and again, like you said, you're putting my thoughts into good words, John. This is very helpful. But spending time with Frozone is time we're not spending with Bob or Elastigirl. Even Edna Mode. I love Edna Mode, but that's time we're not spending with our main characters. And so that's what I meant when I was saying sequels, the problem is they're stuck with trying to keep what worked in the first one. But like, honestly, like you said, you could do the entire movie without Frozone and without Edna and without like why bring those characters back? And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't. Like, I understand the directing choice, but by doing that, you are not allowing new characters to come in and really have more time or enriched time with your main characters. And it's all just these trade-offs of minutes. And even if you bump it up to 118 minutes, there's still only so many that you can keep the attention. But yeah, a good story, but an okay script. Well, okay, we're not quite running third yet, so let's jump into the two other things I mainly wanted to talk about. Is we have the music, but I'll get to that second. But also the twist. So we have the twist of the villain. It's not really surprising anybody. Like, I didn't like obviously know what was going to happen because I didn't read the script ahead of time, but your hero being surprised by haha it's me is not anything super new. What did you think of that aspect of the story / script, Tristan, with the screenslaver?
It was one of those things where I saw it coming a mile away, and that's not necessarily a criticism, because I think too many people use that as a criticism, where they're just like, oh yeah, no, I totally figured it out. Like the filmmakers didn't pull the wool over my eyes. I'm
But
too
they weren't
smart.
trying to.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's just like, yeah, like if you can guess it, that usually means that they're doing something right, that they're following the rules of filmmaking and story progression.
You have to breadcrumb it. Otherwise, your audience is completely blindsided and they're like, that doesn't make sense. Like, that little Johnny is the villain. Like, we've never even seen them for 3 scenes. You have to ease your audience into that kind of a twist.
Right. And with that twist comes the sacrifice of character development.
Because you're developing one character and then turning them into another.
Right. I think that's the problem, is that with the twist coming so late in the film, the twist sacrificed the character development of the real villain. And so once we get that real villain, it's just like, it's a rush to the climax.
Yeah.
And I think that's
why you have to
something that
monologue
really,
and info dump. Otherwise, you have no time to learn. Yeah.
And I think that really hurt the movie, and that hurt the story. And it's a trope that a lot of movies fall into, a lot of action films fall into. And this one was no different. And even though I'm not criticizing the twist, I think that's one thing that I think if they revealed the antagonist in the second act, it would allowed us to build more to the climax, and it made it more impactful.
I agree. I think additionally, if they had revealed the antagonist to the audience, but not to Elastigirl, that
I can get down with that.
That's a much better progression, because that introduces tension with the audience, because we know something the main character doesn't.
Go in the back room with her. That's
exactly. And you can, and that buys you time to have a few fakes where it's like, hey, why don't you come over here? And you're like, oh, they're going to reveal. Oh, they didn't reveal it that time. Okay. Maybe the next scene that they're together, and that builds your anticipation with it. And then you can have that the twirling mustache, haha, I'm the villain moment right before the climax, and then you have that all of that goodwill built through the end of it.
Yeah, no, that would be, again, these are all nuances in the story. It's still the same kind of story we're talking about.
Right.
But yeah, and that's kind of part of this script or story, is the mystery. Like, who is the screenslaver? Like, what is their goal? Like, we spend so much time not knowing as an audience member that by the end we're kind of like, oh, so you kind of Batmaned your way into this life because you parents died, and like, we don't care. By the time it's actually given to us, it's so late in the movie that we like, these are tangential characters at best. The brother and sister, like, I never really cared about them at all through the entire movie. Yeah. Like, they're not supers, they're not part of the family. So that's, I think, a major thing of this movie is, again, when things are revealed, what the pace is of the plot. And it's a long plot. Well, we get Michael Giacchino coming back for another amazing score. I think he does a good job of still using the motifs, obviously established in the first one. Again, it's a sequel for him too, so he's revisiting his previous work. And I mean, I don't think there was anything that like super stood out to me. But did either of you have something in the music, like a cue or a moment, or was there a Superman moment that impacted you?
No, the score is fine. It's it's not something where I'm like, oh, this is a great score. My reaction was more along the lines of, it works, it's cool. There wasn't anything I walked away with where it was so fresh and new that I had to have it, sort of thing. I think that all of the really fresh stuff was in the first one. And so this, it's one of those eternal back and forth feeling, argument, blah, blah, blah things that happens with sequels, where sometimes you're really lucky and you get a sequel that breaks the mold and does something different. or really leans into things and makes it feel new again, or you have a sequel that is Iron Man 2 that just sucks and I never want to talk about it again. Incredibles 2 is not that, but Incredibles 2 also is not The Godfather Part 2 or The Empire Strikes Back or anything like that. It's more in that, again, that safe space of, you know what you're going to get. This is nothing that's going to challenge you, but you'll still enjoy it. This is the, I went back to the same restaurant because I enjoyed it the first time I went. I expect the experience to be replicated. I'm not going there because I want to try something fresh. I want to go there because I know I'm going to be satisfied. But with that knowledge you're going to be satisfied, you are sacrificing the opportunity to be surprised. And that's the type of sequel that, all the way from everything else we've talked to even the score, that's where we are with it. And the score is in that exact same wheelhouse of Giacchino comes back and it's like, yeah, I've been here before. Okay, I know what to do, and I'm not going to disappoint anybody, but this is what it is. He knocked it out
in a couple weeks. We know it wasn't a huge stretch now.
Right. He wasn't composing Vader on the Murder Express at the end of Rogue One or something like that.
Oh, Vader on the Murder Express. I like that. All right. Well, we're rounding third. So I want to kind of give this moment to you guys for any like kind of final thoughts or things we didn't hit. So let's start with you, Tristan. Any other thoughts you had on this movie, and just take us right into your rating.
I think we explained it pretty well. I think we went over what we liked and what we didn't like. There's a lot of great moments in this movie. There's a lot of great character moments in this movie. It's a good story, but it's an okay script. It is phenomenal animation, some really one-of-a-kind action sequences, but it does not capture the essence of the original. And I think after 14 years of waiting, you expect something because this isn't a cash grab. You cannot call this a cash grab after 14 years. This is something that was waited for, plotted, thought about, and just really laid down and, put on a record. And, Brad Bird's in a room, just, sitting in a beanbag chair, thinking about what this movie is going to be. And so there's no excuses. And while this is a good movie, as I said at the beginning, this is a good movie, not a great movie. I give it a solid 3 stars with no prejudice.
Awesome. Now, John, I'd like to go to you, but we missed you last time when we were talking about The Incredibles. So I want your double rating. I want to know what number you're giving. I want it. Number your rating for Incredibles and Incredibles 2.
No, you know what? No. People have to find me on social media to hear my rating of the first Incredibles. That's it. You have to reach out to me there. And if you don't know where to reach me, you haven't been listening to everywhere I am. So never mind. I'm the villain now.
Oh, what a twist. I didn't see coming.
Exactly. Let me put these goggles on you.
Okay. Give me Incredibles 2 then.
I would say that with Incredibles 2, this is a lot like Tomorrowland. I want to like it more than I do. I really wanted to like it more than I do, especially since this was my first time watching it. I was like, okay, I know how successful this was. There's distance. Nobody's opinion can influence me here. I'm coming into this as cold as I possibly can. There's no hype coming around it. Maybe I should have had a little hype coming around it. Maybe if I'd seen it in the theater, a little of that momentum would have carried me through. But I think that it was somebody in one of their reviews said that if the title were here, I'm reading it from it's Michael Phillips from the Chicago Tribune. One of the things he wrote was, if the title were Satisfactories 2, it'd be about right. I think that's correct. I will give this a 3. I watched it. Granted, I was a little bit tired, but if I'm truly engaged by a film, I won't be dozing off by, 2/3 of the way through it and waking myself and say, oh, right. I gotta finish this.
Right.
So yeah, this is a 3 out of 5.
Yeah. I think, just the fact that I will rewatch Incredibles over and over. It's always fun. It's one of those, if it was on, if my kids put it on and I walk by the TV, I'm like, oh, I could spend the next 60 minutes sitting down and watching the rest of this. Like, it's a joy. Every moment, every scene. This one, I mean, we saw it in theaters. I don't think we don't even own it, but it's like we've all said. I think we've all kind of saying the same thing. I am also giving it a 3. Man, that train scene gives it at least 1 point, right? Just for that, because I almost wish that was the end. Like, I get that the end has to have the family working together, but if that sequence or that energy or that amazingness was at the end, because it was kind of a lackluster end. Like, again, it had a lot of amazing things going on with the ship and the plane and all of that, but it was the difference. And maybe I can't have my cake and eat it too, because the train is Elastigirl in her element. The ending is we have to find a thing for everybody to do, and that's a very different formula for your finale. Granted, it can work really well. Like, sometime, I mean, we talk about Star Wars has this issue where, look at the end of episode 1, you have the space battle, the lightsaber battle, the grass battle, and there's a fourth one. And the the other group,
Palace.
And the
Battle
palace
of the
battle.
Palace.
So you have 4 battles going on at the exact same time. It's insane. And you kind of have the same with this, where there's a lot going on, and Jack's got to be there, and so yeah, I'm going to give it a 3. I can't go below that. I think there's still a lot of good aspects to it, but I'm really hoping Ray Gunn is animated. I haven't looked up anything on it, but I'm hoping that he's doing another animated film and leaning into animation. And if Brad Bird gets unleashed and could really just tell an animated story, drive his team to tell something original that he's thought up, and really play with what that visual medium can do, I think it's going to be amazing and blow this out of the water. Maybe not make the billions, because that's just the Pixar machine. And we all knew that was coming when this movie came out, but I think it would still be amazing. Well, that is it for The Birdhouse. That joke is still one of the best ones we've come up with here on Houselights. But next week, we're going to try something a little different. We're going to be going into the house of Kevin Reynolds, but we're going to kind of go just to the rooms we'd like to visit. Those ones that are unlocked and a joy to watch. But starting in 1991 with Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, here on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.